Welcome. We're going to have a little stitching and chatting. I've just started a new little project here. It's going to be a flower, if I do it right, that is. And I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just doing this intuitively as I go. And I sure will be doing that because this is going to be a stitch and chat. And my subject matter I wanted to talk about is how we cope with caregiving. You know, seems like we all have to be a caregiver at some point in our life. And slow stitching and having something to do like this can really help us in the moments when just life overwhelms us in those situations. I wanted to share my experience with my mother. I love my mother and she loved me, and we were the best of friends our whole life together. And in the last 5 years of her life, she developed dementia, and her mind just really wasn't there most of the time. But coping with, it's coping with the heartbreak, the hopelessness, but also looking back, there were some hilarious moments that we spent together while she was suffering from that illness. And you can't change what's going on. There was a quote, let me see, I wrote it down, by Tara Reid. I don't know who she is, but this was the quote, and it resonated with me. While no one can change the outcome of dementia or Alzheimer's, with the right support, you can change the journey. And I so found that to be an absolute true statement. The right support, and I want to add the right mindset of the caregiver. And in that case, it was me. The right mindset changed the journey. My mother was 80 years old when she first displayed signs of dementia. By the time she was 82, she could no longer recognize anyone except my husband and me, probably because we had been her caregivers and constant companions for the last 20 years of her life. At the age of 83, she became bedridden, incontinent, and no longer able to walk at all. The heartbreak of it, to say that my mother had been the very best of mothers, well, that's just saying too little. As I reached adulthood, she also became my best friend. So to watch her physical and mental health deteriorate, to see the quality and the dignity of her life stripped from her, was almost more than I could bear. Strangely, her dementia became my consolation. Why would I say such a thing? Dementia robbed my mother of the ugliness of reality. She never consciously related to her bedridden state, her incontinency, and the indignities that entailed. There was a period when she lost recognition of me at times. Then, when she first called me Mama, my heart just shattered. Her feelings at those times were like a child that had been lost and who was just happy to be back home with her mother. We cried together, you could imagine. Her from joy, me from heartbreak. What was the hopelessness? Well, hopelessness over time leads to acceptance. And with acceptance, believe it or not, comes the patience to cope. Those are lessons I learned while accompanying my mother during that period of her life. I could do nothing, say nothing, feel nothing that would change anything. Those were my feelings in the beginning. But hopelessness soon gave way to inventiveness, imaginativeness, and a sense of rising to a greater challenge, adventurous even. When my mother's mind was in another world, no amount of reasoning could persuade her of the truth or of a different reality. On the contrary, it simply added to her confusion. So, for her sake, I learned to live in her universe. I found that I could agree to see what she saw and hear what she heard, even though those things stayed invisible and silent to me. Mother and I were fortunate in that her illusions were never violent or frightening, and while I could only get glimpses into that world and could never hope to understand all that she experienced, we were able to share a lot together. What were some of the hilarious parts? They may only be hilarious to me, but I'll share some with you. Finding the hilarity in such a situation, it comes from learning to live just in the moment, in an altered reality, in loving acceptance of just what is. When I stopped trying to bring my mother back to my reality and lived moments at a time in hers, we had the time of our lives. Let me share a few of those moments with you. Hold that thought just a second while I change threads here. I can't seem to think and do some tasks at the same time, so let me change threads and I'll pick up my thought. Okay, as you can see, I'm just pretty much, sewing down, couching down these threads. They're just part of the floral element. Don't ask me how yet. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. Let's see. I got some red here. Let's use that. You ever just start something? Just start it? I had this little 9 patch. Nothing ever was done with, so I just had it in my drawer, of course. And so I thought, well, let me just put a flower on top of it of some kind. And of course, my first go-to is my scraps. And so that's what we're doing. We're using some scrap muslin for petals and scrap threads. And what else we don't know yet. Okay, let's see. What was one of those hilarious moments I could share with you? Oh yeah. There was a time she asked me if I could see the monkey in the trees. I replied, well, not very well. Exactly where is she? She pointed to the top of the wall opposite her bed. Oh, I see him, I replied. Then I asked if she had a friend or what the trees look like. It was then that I realized how complete and populated my mother's altered reality really was. She described the trees in detail. Most of them I recognized by her description, what kind of tree she was describing to me, but some were new to me altogether. Then she described flowers, butterflies, birds, and I believe I remember it turned out to be 3 kinds of monkeys. Different color monkeys, different size monkeys, with kind of different personalities, the way she would describe them. And what really helped me not be so sad about her mind doing these things was that she was enjoying her illusion. She could lay in her bed and stare at that area of the wall, and I could say, Mom, what are they doing now? And she'd say, you can't see? I said, not from where I am. I can't see very well. So she would start describing me how they were jumping around or how they were interacting or just whatever. And I just, went with it. And the more I entered her world, the more I interacted with her in her reality, the happier, the calmer, the more satisfied she was. And that told me that I was doing something right, even though it felt wrong in the beginning. It felt like I was lying to her. It felt like I was deceiving her. But in the end, I knew that I was doing what she needed me to do. So we spent many hours over the next months, a couple of years, in fact, in that jungle-like paradise, talking with each other and sometimes to the animals too. She had a couple of little critters that I couldn't really recognize what they were. She didn't call them by a specific name like a monkey or bird or anything. And she just said, see that little critter? And so sometimes they talked to her, and I would ask her a lot about those conversations because I wanted to know if there was anything harmful or in those conversations or frightening to her. But nothing ever came like that. So again, I just listened and asked questions and just interacted in her world. So that was an adventure, let me tell you. And sometimes she'd talk about there were these great big spiders, but these spiders were beautiful spiders in her words. Beautiful colors. And they would were shy and they would stay up in the corner. Even though they were huge spiders, they could get in the crack between the ceiling and the wall. Now, there was no crack between the ceiling and the wall, but in my mother's universe, there was. And the big spiders could come and go there. They never came down from there. They never scared her. And so we lived with spiders. That's all I can say. And it just, like I said, I was so grateful that the way her mind was working was pleasant, because I know that's not the case for everyone, but for her it was. And I'm also kind of think that because I entered her reality with her, I helped it maybe to stay that way. It was something she looked forward to sharing with me every day. And so that might be something that, if you're in that situation, you might think about. If they have a world they can share, and someone's not always telling them they're wrong, they're crazy, it doesn't exist. That creates so much stress for them. And you can't convince them anyway. So to me, it was better to live her life. Let me see. What else? There was, oh yeah. There was the time she told me that I needed to make the two children playing on her roof to get down before they hurt themselves. Well, let me thread up my needle again. I'll just tell you that was a hoot of a time. Let's see. Here we go. Separate this out. Okay. Just about to get another one threaded here. There we go. Took me long enough, didn't it? Okay. Well, we have two down. Let's see, I've got blue, so I'll stay in this one over here for now. Okay. Okay, let's see, where were we? What was I going to talk about? Oh yeah. When she told me that I needed to do something about the children playing on our roof because they were going to get hurt. Dumb me. That's one time I forgot. And I tried to convince her that there were no children on her roof. That didn't go over very well, I'll tell you. She ended up getting very agitated, very upset with me, just totally anxious. And so it finally dawned on me, Linda, you're doing it again. You're trying to drag her into your reality. It's not going to happen. Get back into hers. I decided then and there that I had to find a way, when a problem arose, to help her resolve the problem in her world, in her reality. That was the only way it was going to get done. So I thought, you know, if she could do that, then we would probably come to an end of those type situations because she could resolve them. So I asked her, okay, Mom, how do the children get on your roof? She said, this really floored me because I really expected her to say, I don't know. But that's not what she said. She said, well, they climbed up the tree behind the house and jumped over onto the roof. Okay. I settled her in her wheelchair. I remember I got her in her wheelchair. She had an electric wheelchair, and I could control the little things on the arm of it for her and take her outside that way. And so I got her in a wheelchair, and we went outside to confront those troublesome little kids that were on her roof. Of course, when we got out there were no children on the roof. Of course, there never had been. And there was no tree anywhere around, and there never had been a tree behind the house. We were both, I remember, we were both staring up at the roof with perplexed expressions when she said, well, somebody finally cut down that tree. And you know, that was the last I ever heard about those tree jumping kids. So I was so glad that I reverted back to living in her world and problem solving in her world. And she just definitely solved that problem herself. It was all I could do not to laugh, but you got to remember, don't laugh, because all this stuff is deadly serious to these dementia patients. It's their reality. They're serious about it. And so don't laugh. Sometimes I do odd little things just to create a diversion. If there were days where she seemed to be a little agitated with no apparent reason, or maybe just bored, or maybe sad or melancholy, well, I just do odd, sometimes stupid little things on purpose just to create a diversion. One morning, I put syrup on her breakfast toast instead of on her pancakes. She laughed and called me a silly little girl. I laughed with her and asked if she wanted me to make her a new piece of toast. Her reply was, no, I like syrup on my toast. You can put jam on my pancakes. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you, she was, even with dementia, I couldn't outwit my mother. She was sharp as a tack, I tell you. She ate every bite of both of them. Sometimes it would take a lot to dream up stuff to do or say or whatever, but you know, usually it only took one thing, just like that morning, and it got her very much out of a depressive, despondent state of mind that she woke up with, and she giggled throughout the rest of the day, and she was just in a best of humor, I remember. So I practiced that throughout the rest of her life, giving her as many giggly moments as I could come up with. Not being a comedian myself, it was hard at times. So if I had to make a list for someone who's never done this, but perhaps they're just getting started being a caregiver with a dementia patient, Alzheimer's patient, someone there taken care of. Let me see if I can run back through some of the things that I learned. First of all, accept what is. Accept the fact. My mother didn't have the mind she had. She wasn't the person intellectually that I had always known. She was different. She didn't share the same reality as me. She didn't reason the same as I did. She truly was in an altered universe. Another thing would be to make each day of their life about them and help them to enjoy the ride. If you make it about you, and you make it about reality, and you make it about fact, and you make it about all these things that are important, you think, well, they're not. They're not important at all. They weren't important in my mother's world. So I had to make important the things that were in her world. And her quality of life improved each day that I tried to do those things. Visit their world often as you can. Some can articulate very well what's going on in their minds. My mother could, let's put it this way, she seldom initiated a conversation, but there was always this distant look or this stare at a fixed state on the wall or across the room or something. There were clues to tell me that her mind was very much active, but in her world, not in mine. And so I would start asking questions, and when I initiated the conversation, when I would ask the questions, she could give me the answers. Another thing is help them solve their problems within their reality, within their current capabilities to understand. My mother couldn't understand that the monkeys really weren't jumping around in the trees over her bed. She could never understand that. So if she had a problem with a monkey, the best way was to solve it in her world. And I can remember one time she had a problem with one of the monkeys, was, according to her, misbehaving. I couldn't ever find out exactly how, but I said, well, is it an older one or a younger one, or can you tell who's older? And she said, yeah, the other one. I said, well, why don't you tell that other one to get on to that little one? And she did, and it worked. So be inventive, be creative, but stay in their reality so that they can solve problems within their own reality. If you don't have a good sense of humor, you better find one, because you need it. If you don't do it naturally, create it. It's as necessary as breathing to have a sense of humor. That keeps you sane, and it keeps them sane. Sometimes caregivers can be the worst part of a dementia patient or Alzheimer's patient's world. The next thing, never ever lose the value of the time you have with them. I'm going to tell you, it's difficult and hard, but when they're gone, they're gone. And there will be times that you wish you had them and their world back for just a little while. So forget about you, forget about your world, and live as many moments with them in their world. Keep them safe, keep them happy, keep them secure in their world. And remember, at the end of the day, when they're sleeping and you're settling down, and the stresses for you that day, the sadness you feel because you don't have that person the way you want them, you're afraid for the outcome of this person, you're sad to see their lack of dignity in life. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. But life goes on. Their life will go on for a period of time. And so must you. If you're going to be of any help to them, if you're going to be the sunshine in their life, the touchstone for them, the doorway to reality, theirs or yours, whatever, life must go on, you must go on. So you find ways to be happy with them. And know that everything you do counts. They may not know what you do ever, but you do. And you will never live with regrets that you didn't do all you could to make the quality of the life of the person you're caring for with dementia the best that it could be. The absolute best. And who are we to say that their reality isn't better than ours? You know, if we could truly check in to their world, we may never check out. Think about that sometime. But that's what I really wanted to share in this stitching and chatting session, because I know that a lot, if you haven't been there already, will maybe face that someday, and you might find a few pointers in my experience to know how to make it easier on you and the person you're caring for. Everybody's an individual, so what works for some may not work for all, but I can tell you it worked for me, and it worked for my mom. So take care, be safe, and until next time, let's all stay scrap happy.